So, sometime around forever ago, a number of friends and followers asked me if I would talk about conlanging, that is, the process of making your own personal language. It's something I've been doing since I was 8 years old, and now that I'm in the process of receiving a doctorate in linguistics, hopefully it's a topic on which I can be helpful and help world builders and language nuts like me. I'll admit that because language is something that I eat and breathe so much that I had challenges figuring out what to talk about here. So part of the reason for my delay in this video was just making sure that I didn't talk for 20 hours on the topic and bore you all. Consequently, what this video is going to be is a broad overview of tips in your own language creation. It's by no means comprehensive of all the things that you can do in the language building process, but hopefully it gets some ideas and creativity started. If people end up enjoying my video and request for more, maybe even if people don't, it's possible that I can go through and make some more videos in depth on some of the various subtopics. Before I go through and talk about my tips and techniques on language creation, I figured I might as well show you some of my own original languages in brief, just so that you can see what I do for fun and what my conlanging process results in. I've picked 4 of the languages I've worked with over the years, and which I can pronounce with varying degrees of fluency. Ues var me niet kernuif edran arab soort thingen, desa kalkunat de tarayada. Ko e omatakan tu be edji var jea harka double edjip zo edjib. Vek ko tan matakan de brilli momatak, de zo kawena ve edjib, mataka kawetu. La shashati sha, fanjik ka hili sahun, do hawakanda shampan. Khadundi, khadundai. That last language, called Tagan, is one that I'm currently working on, so I'll consequently be using some examples of that in this video. So, the first and biggest thing that I want to emphasize is that making a language does not start by making words. I repeat, don't start by making words in your language. If you do, you'll bypass a lot of incredibly important considerations you need in order to construct your language. It's like trying to start by building the second story of a house before you build the foundation. Languages are a lot more than a clump of words. So things that you should definitely consider as you form your language include the following: a unique set of sounds by which the language is formed, a mechanism by which words of different categories, like nouns and verbs, are formed, rules by which to order the sentences, that is, order the words in the sentence, and then lastly, a cultural understanding of what words, meanings, metaphors, and more are developed. So you will notice that the first step that I use in the language building process is the choice of what sounds are in your language. Every single language has a limited set of designated sounds. These sounds are what are combined to form words. Therefore, before you can even think about what your words are going to be, you need to consider what your sounds are going to be. As you consider your sounds, remember that you have to consider both consonants like p, t, and g, as well as vowels like e, a, I, ow, u. Also consider that your sounds don't even have to be English sounds. English has some sounds like f that are actually very rare and aren't found in most languages. But then other languages have sounds that English doesn't have. Sounds like da, da, to name a few. So there's actually some pretty easy ways to check out sounds that aren't in your native language. Wonderfully, linguists have documented every single sound in all of the world's languages that we've studied, and put them into an alphabet called the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, and even have online interactive charts where you can go and listen to all these sounds online. So, check it out. As you will notice, this is just a website called ipachart.com. You can go through and you can check out all of the different sounds. There's a chart for vowels, and you can click on one and hear the different sounds. There you go, some nice sounds, not all of which are in English. And then you can also get this the same way for the consonants, of which you've noticed probably that there are quite a few. So, you can get sounds like the ones in English.
Ba, ba.
Appa. Then ones that aren't. Let's pick a good one. Oh, these are fun.
Ha, aha. Ra, ra.
And you can even go down here.
Ah, ga, ga.
Now I could keep on doing this forever, but that's probably not why you're watching this video. But it gets you the idea. You can go down here onto websites like these, listen to the different sounds, and get a selection of what you think you might want in your language. So now I can't get into the theory about how all the sounds and consonants are formed in pattern in languages, but there actually are patterns across the world about what sorts of sounds tend to co-occur. I'll brush over a few of these ideas really lightning quickly. So, first of all, most languages have about 15 to 30 consonants, although there is one language with over 80. In general, languages with more consonants have fewer vowels, and languages with a lot of vowels have fewer consonants. As far as vowels are concerned, the 5 most common vowels are E, E, A, O, and U. And it's very common for a language just to have those 5 sounds. So if you're trying to figure out what vowels you are, that's a beautiful way to go. For consonants, most languages tend to have over 50% of their consonants come from this top row right here, the plosive or stop row. And furthermore, if you have a sound in one of these columns at the top here, you're probably going to have more than one sound from the same column. Lastly, if you happen to have sounds that are clustered within the same column and row, very, very, very likely that it will keep on happening that way, and you'll always have to pair those two, especially for this top row. So, if you want a little bit more ideas about the languages and what sort of sounds there are, you can honestly always go and check out real languages too. So, the key word that you want to search for in the Google toolbar is phonology. You can Google things like Mandarin phonology, Norwegian phonology, Khmer phonology, Laotian phonology, and get results that show you how the languages combine these sounds. So, after you pick these sounds, you have to decide how the sounds are put together to form words. In English, we have a number of prefixes and suffixes that are used to form verbs, nouns, adjectives, and so forth. There are 2 main types of prefixes and suffixes, ones that form new words, and then ones that provide just a little bit more information about the same word, but don't create a whole new word. So, for example, in English, let's take the word cat. I can add the suffix s to give more meaning. Cats means there's more than one cat. Didn't change the meaning of the word, but just added a little more information. So I can also do some similar things with suffixes and verbs. I can add a suffix to change the tense of my verb. I can say he walks to the store, he walked, he is walking. Other types of prefixes and suffixes in English can make new words. I can change the verb sleep into the adjective sleepy by adding that e on the end. Or I can change the noun institution into the verb institutionalize. Notice that when you have those sorts of suffixes, they keep on doing the same things. So, consider that. Does your language have prefixes and suffixes to encode some meaning? These things can be very powerful. So let's consider nouns a little bit more in depth. In English, articles like a and the are in front of some nouns, some specific types of nouns. And then we can make a noun like cat, plural, by adding the suffix s, cats. But not every language is like English. So does your language have the word the in front of proper nouns like Paris and Ahmed? Does your language put suffixes on the noun to indicate whether it's the subject, the direct object, or the indirect object of the sentence? It's another possibility. Or, as far as plurals are concerned, does your language maybe repeat the noun to indicate a plural? Maybe your language says cat instead of cats. Or maybe a lot of the nouns in your language are made by compounds, like stoplight, which combines two words, stop and light, to make a new word with its own meaning. There's a lot of things that you can do with nouns. Now, verb tenses and aspects are also highly variable per language. They're cool, but they're crazy. You will need to spend a lot of time thinking about how verbs work. Verbs can give you a lot of information, and that might be within a prefix or a suffix that's on the verb. So that could tell you how many people are doing the action, what gender the people are who are doing the action, whether the action is in the past, the present, or the future, such as walked in English, or if the action has been completed or it's ongoing over a span of time, or even if the action's been repeated a number of times. These are just some of the things that a prefix, a suffix, or some other marking on the verb might tell you. Many languages have more tenses and more suffixes than English does. Or the languages might not use suffixes for tense at all. Maybe walk is the same in the past, as in the present, as in the future, and only the context of other words like tomorrow and yesterday give the timing. That is another possibility. Maybe your verbs don't have any markings on them at all. Regardless, you will need to spend a lot of time on verbs to figure out how exactly they work. In addition to thinking about how verb tenses work and how the plural is used on the nouns, don't forget everybody else! Don't forget about adjectives and pronouns and prepositions and articles and adverbs and numbers and more. And remember that they don't have to work the same way English does. They might not even exist in your language. Some languages might not have the word the or other articles. Or some languages might have things that just aren't in English. For instance, in the world, there are some languages with things called infixes. They're like prefixes or suffixes, except that they're squished in the middle of the word. So the word bili might get changed to bumili. So the bili's in there, the um's just in the middle. So, the key concept in all of this is that you think through the way the words in the language are built. How are they built? Is it through compounding or suffixes? By thinking about all these different features, you can create a more cohesive and realistic feeling language. Words frequently don't come from nowhere. Words with related meanings are often made from each other. Even while you're making up the words in your language, you need to consider how your sentences are built. The sentences. How are the words ordered? In English, we have a basic word order where the subject in the sentence comes first, then the verb, then the object. That's not true in every language, as the story always goes. And in fact, English doesn't have the most common type of sentence word ordering out there. So maybe in your language, the verb comes first, and then the subject and the object. So I wouldn't say I go to the store. I'd say, go I to the store. One thing I will say that is it's very, very rare for the object to go before the verb, before the subject. That almost never happens. The fact that this happens in the Star Trek language Klingon is actually an inside joke for linguists, because the linguist who made Klingon intentionally made it a bizarrely unlikely language. So the language is filled with inside jokes. But anyway, don't do a subject-verb-object order for your sentences. But a lot of other options are open. Sentences can be extremely complicated in how the words are ordered. Some languages like Latin and Greek don't have strict word orders because they have so many suffixes that give you the meaning to all you need to know. You can put the subject of the sentence anywhere and speakers will know what you mean because there's a suffix that tells you that's the subject. Other languages like English have a really strict word order. I throw the ball to John and John threw the ball to me are very different meanings. But there's a lot of details within a sentence that are very important to figure out beyond subjects, verbs, and objects. Maybe a preposition comes after the noun it describes. Instead of on the box, I would say the box on. Where do adjectives or numbers go? Before or after the noun? Also, do all sentences have the same sentence structure? In English, the sentence structure of questions and declarative sentences are different. It's not you go to the store. Do you go to the store? It's different. Your language might have different word orders depending if someone is speaking a declaration, a command, a question, a request, or a hypothetical situation. So, that's a lot of blabbing. At this point, I might pull up the language I'm working on, Tagen, and show you what I'm talking about. Now, documenting your language is very important. Don't just keep lists of words. A dictionary isn't going to be enough, you'll probably find out. Record the grammar, the sounds, the prefixes, the suffixes, the roots, and more. How will I save my languages through multiple means? First, I use OneNote. OneNote is an amazing world-building tool. You can essentially create a wiki of your self-made world. For languages, it allows you to create subsections of information on your language. So for me, I've got a subsection on the sounds. I've got another subsection on the history of the language. I've got another subsection on the verbs, and so forth. I even have one section that's dedicated to sample sentences of my language, along with audio files so that I can click on them and hear me saying those sample sentences. Secondly, and also quite fun, is a simple program that I've made. Now, I am one of the world's worst programmers the world has ever seen. You actually don't want to call me a programmer because I'm so bad. I've never taken a formal programming class, and I would frankly completely fail one. But I know just enough to make myself this little dictionary. And what I can do is I can search a word in either Tagen or English and find some information about it. So let's just pick a word. Let's say like scared. Type in the word scared. Boom! We've got information. Right here, I've got information on how the word is spelled, how it's pronounced, what type of verb it is, so it's an intransitive verb, along with definitions and sample sentences of how the word is used. I've got information on how the word is used in multiple dialects, and even history on it. And you can do that for basically any word. It's incredibly helpful. And it's great because let's say that you're ever going to translate something, but you don't remember the word for many. Then you can just type it up, many, and get all the material you would ever need to know on what the word many does. So, all this also brings up something else really important, and it's the idea that every language is the product of a culture. The vocabulary, the sentences, the figurative language, all of it reflects the society in which the language was formed. Metaphor, I've always found, is incredibly important and pervasive in speech. So in English, for instance, we have a linguistic metaphor by which the direction up means good things and down means bad things. So consider, I'm feeling down today. Situations are really looking up for me. The stock prices rose. She's really upbeat and energetic. The downfall of the empire began with corruption. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In English, we also have metaphors by which the past is behind us and the future is in front of us. It's the opposite. in other languages. Some languages speak as though the past is in front of them because it's what they can see, whereas the future is behind and obscure because they can't see it. Makes sense. So, metaphors are not constant between languages, and there's a lot more metaphor than you realize within your own language. English has a lot of computer and transportation metaphors that have become so embedded in the language that people don't even realize that a sentence like, "I get it," is a metaphor. And it is. I get it is a metaphor because it relates knowledge with something physical that we can receive like a package. So there are many other sentences in English with this same metaphor. That means that your language should have figurative language that reflects the values and what is around them. Even the vocabulary should be tailored towards what is important to the people and other aspects of their cultures. To give one little silly example, in my language, Tongan, it's the word bratty. Literally, what it is a verb meaning to pillow. Because in their society, the upper classes are the people who own many pillows. They're the people who are separated from the hardships of this world because of their financial security. And thus, they're the people who are most likely going to act a little bit like brats. Horrible stereotype, but sometimes languages do that. So if I am pillowing, then I'm acting like a whiny person in their society. Note that this has nothing to do with our society. I'm just talking about the culture of the Tongan speakers. This is an extremely limited overview of how I conlang. I start by creating sounds. Then I think about how the words are built, whether it's by prefixes, compound words, how verbs are structured, and more. At the same time, I consider how sentences are formed and organized, and how the culture plays a part in the different words and the different metaphors and the different types of sentences that people are going to say. All of this I document very carefully so that I don't lose my work, so that I can continue off of previous work, and then over time craft a language that's complete with meaning, grammar, and a unique sound. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope this was helpful and fun in some capacity. I'm at least incredibly thankful that you watched this video. You're always free to ask in the YouTube comments or in my Tumblr Ask inbox for some more information or details about part of the conlanging process. I'd also encourage people who found this fun to take an Introduction to Linguistics course or buy a linguistics textbook. Learning more about the subfields of linguistics can help you with your own language creation. So thank you so much again, friends. Have a wonderful day. Take care.